Good morning, everyone, and thank you again for joining us on a Saturday morning. As Shreyas was just saying 2 minutes ago, that it's amazing to see a lot of you joining us regularly on a Saturday morning. So, I am Pallavi, and my colleague Shreyas is the co host, and we are the co founders of Asian Pathfinders. We are really glad to have Sutapa Sanyal ma'am joining us today on a topic which is self empowerment for women. Before we hand it over to our moderator Menko, I will just go over 2 minutes of introduction, not a long time though. So just about us, we are a knowledge sharing platform. The whole idea was to bring different voices together, and I think that's been seen through this entire pioneer series also that we've had. We started with Dr. Anil Kakodkar, who's a nuclear scientist. Today is the last session in the pioneer series, and we have Sutapa Sanyal ma'am. So, and she's going to speak on empowerment for women. So the vast area of knowledge that we've gathered over this last 2 months has been amazing, and we've had a really great pleasure to speak with everyone. Everyone's given their time, all our pioneers, and we really loved it. At least I did, and I know Shreyas did. So I hope a lot of you also benefited from it. We'll be going back to our usual sessions after Diwali, that is on November 21st. We're taking a break for November 14th because it's Lakshmi Puja Day. But we do have a session on November 12th, and that's a session we thought we'd like to do it now. It's on the Delhi's air pollution because it's an issue which is not just affecting Delhi, but a lot of parts of India, because Delhi might be having a very high pollution level, but you got to see those kind of pollution levels in other parts. So that's on Thursday at 5:30. I will be sending out the details, so do watch out social media and your emails. Uh, so just the community guidelines. Respect the views of others, but please share your questions, your comments in the chat section. We'll be taking it on after our speaker makes the opening remarks. And just the language that you use, just keep it parliamentary. And that's about it. And you guys know how to get in touch with us, Pallavi Stress and Asian Pathfinders. So, and today's session, so we have Sutapa Sanyal, but that's Menka's job to introduce her. I'm going to introduce Menka. Menka is a lawyer practicing in the Supreme Court, Delhi High Court, as well as the trial courts in Delhi. She's also the co-founder of Women in the Criminal Law Association, New Delhi. She was highly recommended by a couple of lawyers that I know that I should ask her to be the moderator. So I'm glad she agreed. And she is the graduate of National University of Jurisdictional Science, Calcutta or Kolkata. And she does write on issues at the intersection of criminal justice and human rights. So over to you, Menka. And that's about it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Pallavi, for that introduction, and very warm welcome to everyone for today's session. So today's speaker is Ms. Sutapa Sanyal, and I think there is no one better suited to give a talk on the self-empowerment of women as her. Ms. Sutapa Sanyal was the first woman IPS officer to serve as Director General of UP Police. And just to give everyone background, Director General of UP Police is the highest ranking police officer of an Indian state, and that too of UP, which is the most populous state of the country. So Ms. Sanyal was effectively heading the police force of one of the most populous states of our country, and that is an accomplishment that does not need, more elaboration. She is the recipient of the Police Medal for Distinguished Services from the Honorable President of India. She founded the UP Police Mahila Saman Prakosht, which is a gender-sensitive community policing model that has worked to empower over 175 million women and children. I just want to highlight some of the initiatives, and I hope ma'am can talk to us about these initiatives in more detail because they're really interesting and important. One of the initiatives is Vikalp, India's first police web portal for reporting crimes against women and children, which enables women to file complaints digitally without having going physically to the police station. Nav Chetna, which is a gender sensitization training for police. Akshaya, which is a self-defense and leadership training program for girls. Citizen Cadet, which is a program to channelize the leadership of women collectors. And Rubaru, which is a dialogue forum to increase communications between public servants and the youth. Ms. Sanyal was also instrumental in setting up model child-friendly police stations, special juvenile police units in UP, and led the anti-human trafficking efforts of the state. So when Pallavi and Shreyas invited me to sort of give an introduction to Ms. Sanyal, I started watching her, various other interviews. And she spoke about some of her anecdotes about being the first woman and the only woman in the IPS training academy when she went at that time. And I hope ma'am can, elaborate on those anecdotes. But I thought about the movie Gunjan Saxena, which sort of talks about, when a woman is the only woman in a training academy in a sort of area which is mostly male dominated. And the challenges that one faces and the sort of unique experience of being a path breaker in literally everything, right? But as I thought about it more, I realized that ma'am's contribution is more than just being a path breaker and the first woman to do all of these achievements. Her contributions through UP Mahila Police Mahila Saman Prakosh is also about setting up these sustainable organizations which are going to empower women and children for times to come. Her efforts have been recognized by a variety of international organizations, international bodies. She has been recognized as the Indian Woman Leader in 2015 by the UK government. She is the only Indian to be invited on the Specialist Group on Crimes Against Children at the Interpol in 2017. She serves on the Advisory Executive Council of the Women Economic Forum, and she is a member of the Advisory Committee of the Central Adoption Resource Authority, which is a Women and Child Development Ministry organization. She now, ma'am, works as a consultant, advisor, trainer, and speaker on issues of leadership, gender and diversity, social inclusion, public policy. She gives training to leading corporate organizations on these issues. She is an independent consultant to the Kailash Satyarthi Children's Foundation. I think personally for me, reading about ma'am's accomplishments is extremely inspiring because she has gone beyond the individual accomplishments through her career, and she continues on this committed path of building a safe, inclusive, and diverse world. And I think for that, she is the best person to speak on today's session. I won't go into more. Ma'am's list of accomplishments is, it doesn't end. So I think I'll stop there and hand it over to ma'am. And then perhaps we can go deeper into some of the things that I've highlighted in the introduction. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Manika. That was a big introduction. Thank you for that. It was pretty generous, by the way. So good morning to everybody who's here, who's taken the trouble to come and join the session on a Saturday morning. So Asian Pathfinders, yeah, I love your tagline. I think it says, building society one conversation at a time. That's wonderful, because we actually need these conversations, which are difficult to come by, because it may talk of a couple of uncomfortable things, but then I guess it's very important to discuss these uncomfortable issues so that we can find a way out of these and then, progress as a society as a whole. So for the time being, I'm going to talk about how you kind of empower yourself. Self-empowerment for women, that's the topic for today, which I had chosen. In fact, I was wondering, what am I going to talk about, whether I should talk about my experiences in policing, etc., etc. But then I thought, why not give a broader shape to it? And, and at least during the COVID times, we've been checking out, in fact, I do check out a lot of these DIY kind of things. So DIY craft and cooking and learning the guitar or learning how to play a piano, that's do it yourself. But then have we ever thought that empowerment is also a kind of do it yourself process? And it's a continuous process. I mean, it's not a one-time event. There are so many layers to it, and you build up on it in multiple ways with multiple tools. And today I'm going to talk about the internal part of building up the empowerment process, that is the self-empowerment. Because, I feel if you do find a beacon of empowerment in your life, it's okay. But then If you don't, well, at least you have yourself to empower yourself, right? So that's very important. And I believe that's the most sustainable kind of empowerment which anybody, but here in this context, a woman can do for herself. So let me look at empowerment at a couple of levels. First would be the physical level. And all of these are important. They are kind of building blocks to the ultimate place where we are trying to reach. Secondly is the mental, the psychological, and the emotional level, which is very, very important. Third would be the financial side of it. Fourth would be the legal. Manika would be in a very good position to say how important it is to have legal empowerment for women. And the fifth, which is very, very important for me at this stage, it always was, is the spiritual level, you know. It's very important. So in fact, you know, these are the steps apart from being in a service which always, you know, challenged me. Every day was a new challenge and I had to pull myself up to face those challenges. Yet these side-by-side empowerment processes must go on in every moment, in fact, in everybody. Well, I'll have a disclaimer because these are my unique experiences. Maybe you will have a different experience because you have a different path from my path. So be free to choose, pick and choose your experiences and your own format of empowering yourself. But you must get onto this process right away, and that is of self-empowerment. So if I talk of physical empowerment, well, physical fitness is the starting point. And you need to be physically fit, which means you need to pay attention. It may seem a very mundane kind of thing, but it's very important. You know, today I am not feeling too well, and I can understand the difference in approaching the topic, in approaching the talk. It does make a lot of difference. So physical fitness is the thing. And for that, you need nutrition, you need exercise. Now, exercises you need to choose. Everything is not going to be of, you know, of attraction to everybody. So whatever you feel good in exercising in it, may be your power yoga, it may be whatever, swimming, cycling, everything. But during COVID times, of course, there is quite a bit of limitation on it, but then you can get what you want to choose to keep yourself physically fit. Proper sleep, proper diet, everything, you know, proper hygiene in your day-to-day activities. You know, I was attending, UP has started a Shakti mission. So a part of it, I was onto a talk with the college students of a Lucknow college, and they had just done their 5 days of online self-defense classes. I mean, these are such innovative things. But then, you know, kind of, you know, self-defense should also be a bit of our goal, because see, ultimately, if you are faced, if a woman is faced with the lumpen elements in society, she will be the first responder. Others will come in later on. So while we are on the physical fitness thing, knowing a little bit about, you know, your self-defense ways and means is a big help. So do keep that into your mind. So, and now I move on to the mental, the emotional, the psychological level of empowering yourself. See, we do a lot of talk about IQ, but it is this EQ part, this emotional quotient part, is becoming extremely important in the changing world of today. So what do we do? What do I mean by mental, emotional, and psychological ways of self-empowerment? Well, the first thing which I can think of is having a dream, and make sure that it is your own dream, because it's not easy to follow somebody else's dream. If it is your dream, no matter what it is, if it is your dream, you will jump out of the bed every morning. You will stretch yourself, you will walk that extra mile to fulfill your dream. And this is the only sustainable way, to dreaming your own authentic dream. You cannot take on the passions of somebody else and convert it into your own and then live up to it. It's very difficult. So let it be your own dream, let it be your own sky. And when you dream your own dream, you connect to your passions and you are engaged in it. This engagement, this involvement is a very big push and pull factor in one's life. And then this personalized dream will have a couple of tools in it, which will help you to fulfill it. And one of them is to have a concrete goal in front of you. You may dream, you may carry your heart along with you, but don't forget to carry your brain along with you too. And for that, you need very, very definite goals. And you need to break down these goals into, long-term or medium-term and short-term goals. The macro planning is fine, but you also need to do the micro planning in between so that you have these arranged and you move on from one goal to another, finally towards whatever is your dream, whatever is your goal in this lifetime. Again, for this, you need to have a complete lay of the land. You need to know everything in the area which you are entering, which is your goal. For that, you need skill development, you need capacity building. So you need to read up a lot. You need to talk to people who are already into that zone into which you want to reach. Maybe it's a profession, maybe it's something which is more self-fulfilling. Internet is a very powerful tool. It may sound very strange, but there was no internet during our times. We never knew what internet was. It came much, much later. So you have your generation is lucky that way, that you have the internet with you. In fact, there is too much of internet in our lives now. You have to kind of wade through the maze of the links and hyperlinks and then focus. Focusing is the main thing. Focus on your goal, what you want out of the internet, how you want to use it in fulfilling your dreams, your passions. And, during the COVID times, when everything, kind of has gotten haywire, but now I think people have settled down. One of the very important things which we need to do is structure our day. Maybe it might begin with making your bed as soon as you get up. And then one thing will lead to another. And at the end of the day, you will have an impressive list of jobs which you have completed and which has taken you a little bit more towards your goal. So, and each one has to find, navigate through all these hazes and mazes to find our own ways which suit us best. Something which may suit me best may not be the best for you. So that much you have to do on your own. You have to find your own path through this, through these challenges. Having a hobby, I have seen, helps a lot. Because it is one thing which kind of enables you to immerse yourself into something. So it's a very immersive thing. Having a hobby is very immersive, and it's also a kind of catharsis. And it helps in your self-actualization. Now you can have there's an array of hobbies available. For me, it's music, because that really helps me forget all my troubles, all my challenges, because for that amount of time, I'm totally immersed into it and I actually forget the world. So do your pick. You have a lot of hobbies. So whatever you like, whatever suits you, you do that. Now, another thing which many from the audience, many a times have told me that there is a need for role models. There is a need for mentors. Well, there is. So you have to find somebody who can counsel you, who can mentor you, who can guide you. And see, again, you people are luckier. During our times, we didn't have too many role models. We didn't have too many mentors or templates to follow. So you are lucky that way. So look for somebody. If you can find, there are professional agencies also who connect the mentors and mentees. So you can look up to them, you can connect to them, you can become their members and then avail of their services. But you know, I've always said, and since this talk is on self-empowerment, what if you don't find a mentor? What if you don't find a role model? You know, I have a fun suggestion for that. I don't know how much it's going to gel with you people, how much it's going to connect with you people. See, if you have a mentor, fine. And if you don't have, well, then picture yourself 5 or 10 years from hence. What you would like to become. And think of this person, this projected self of yours, as your role model. And then, you know, think backwards. So what are the things which you need to reach that projected self of yours? And then you put those things into place, and gradually, you become that role model, that projected self of yours at the same time when you reach your goal. So that is another way of looking at it. But then it's, of course, it's best to find role models in flesh and blood. But then after you have, see, what I'm trying to say is, one needs to realize, see, you people have come so far in life. It's not easy. And for a woman to be born in India, you know, the first challenge is to be born as a girl, because there are umpteen number of cases still. It's very discomforting, but there are still a lot of cases of female feticide. There's so many girls who are not born. So be happy that we are born, that we have parents who have nurtured us. But then again, question yourself, have you come this far only to come this far? No. You've come this far to go further, and you can. So, and that is why, you know, I chose this topic of self-empowerment, because all the time we are looking outside. Okay, the government will come and do this for me. Okay, somebody will come and do this for me. But what if nobody comes? You're not going to waste this life. You're going to make the most of it. Because we still believe that to be born in the genre of Homo sapiens is not easy, and it's not a coincidence. I'll come to it later on, right? So we have to make the best of its life. I'll give you a little bit of, you know, how I faced a lot of challenges. But, you know, the idea is you will fall, you will have challenges. But when you fall, right, at least fall like a seed so that you can again grow up into that tree. This is very important, and this is an attitude. Very few times we are told about inculcating this attitude. So I thought I'll use your platform to communicate these thoughts, because these are not general conversations in a typical Indian family. The general conversations are, how many marks did you get? Why is it that you got 0.5% less than your friend, right? And later on it progresses into how many pairs of shoes you have, how many dresses you have, how many houses you have, how many cars you have. But then, I don't know, I feel for self-actualization, you need a totally different attitude, a totally different set of thoughts, a totally different way of thinking. Like Manika correctly pointed out, I was the only woman in my batch of 1984. Now, I was coming from a place, it was a typically middle-class Bengali family. I was more into arts and crafts and music and academics. I was very fond of reading, and I was not into sports. Now, for And oh yes, one other thing during our times, and again, it may seem very strange to the young people in the audience. See, talking to people of the other sex was not too encouraged during our times. It was very difficult for me to become a friend with a boy, or later on a man. It became very difficult for me because each one of my colleagues at National Police Academy was a man. So see, I was not conditioned, and whatever I had been conditioned into started reflecting over there. I was actually in awe of my male colleagues. I used to fall behind in races. I would fall off horses initially. Every evening was such a, full of so many the tribulations, because the legs would pain so much after the day's hard work, and the police training is extremely hard. It is very difficult, and it's largely a physical training. But then I had decided again that I had come this far not only to come this far, I had to go further. So no matter what the challenges were, how low I felt, I will pull myself up and be there the next morning again at 5:30 or 6 a.m. for the morning parade and the following physical training and the other things which we had. I also understood that while I was not very great at all these activities, I was very good at other things. So you have to discover your inner strengths. I was very good at forensics. I was very good in the indoor classes. So while I tried to improve on the physical side, I was really doing well. I drew confidence from my achievements in the other side. So that is another thing. Many a times when you are low, when you feel you have failed, you have to pull yourself up. You have to dust off the the dust off your dress, the dirt off your dress, and pat yourself in the back and move forward. That is the only way. And that's why, I say self-empowerment is the best empowerment. And I want you to think about this. It is said that hunting animals, they lose 75% of their praise. They're only successful for the 25% of their efforts. Why are we, as the most enlightened of animals, why do we concentrate more on our failures? We shouldn't. We should take lessons from our failures, but gain confidence from wherever we have succeeded and move on. Failures are said to be, stepping stones to success. I feel they are catapults. They catapult you into success. So, so don't sit and worry. It's okay to fail. We all fail. So just keep moving. Don't step back and start brooding over things. That's my only message to you in this context. Next thing is self-belief, right? See, living in a misogynistic and a society where patriarchal thoughts and patriarchal actions start dominating, and especially as a woman who is trying to establish herself or find her place under the sun, you are going to face a lot of challenges. You are going to face a lot of labeling, a lot of flack in whatever you're doing, and you will be surrounded by naysayers who are always predicting that you're going to be a failure, right? These microaggressions are always going to be there. And also remember that patriarchy and misogyny is a kind of mindset. Even women can have it. So you can meet women also with these mindsets. So you have to be careful. You have to calibrate your responses. Now, many people tell me that, a woman is a woman's worst enemy. Well, I don't think a woman or a man is a woman's worst enemy. It is the mindset of that woman or man. It is that patriarchal, it's that misogynistic mindset of that person, which is the enemy. And when you start internalizing whatever they are saying, then you become your worst enemy. So please be careful about it. It's okay. There are so many people in the world, they will say a lot of things. You have to trust yourself. You have to trust your belief. Therein the self-belief comes in. And you have to gain confidence from your beliefs to keep walking your path. You will have a lot of roadblocks, that's fine. But once you understand this, you will be unstoppable. You have to understand that you are your biggest enemy or your biggest friend, nobody else. So that is very important. And you're in this, what is said to be the VUCA world, the volatile, the uncertain, the complex, and the ambiguous world. Resilience is very important. You have to be resilient. You have to stand up to these microaggressions. You have to be your authentic self. I think that is the best way I can put it. I always give this example of the farmer and his donkey. It's a very interesting tiny story. I would like to share it with you. There is this farmer, and the donkey has grown so old that it's not able to perform its task, that is carrying whatever the farmer wanted the donkey to carry onto the markets, etc. Now the farmer thinks, how do I dispose of this donkey? And so he talks to his friends in the village, and they go to a well which is dried up, and then they push that donkey into the well. It's very unfortunate and very unkind thing to do, but that's what it came to their mind. And they started putting dust into it, dirt and dust and all pebbles, everything into it. Now the donkey at the bottom of the well sees everything coming onto it, and it kind of shakes itself and, climbs a little bit higher on that layer of dust and dirt which they were throwing from the top. Then again, more dust comes in and dirt comes in. Donkey again shakes itself and then climbs a little higher. And this continues till the end, when the donkey comes to the brim of the well and literally steps out of the well, right? So, there's a parallel to it. There's a parallel to this story. People will throw dirt and dust at you. You have to shake them off. You have to be resilient enough to just walk out of that mess which people are creating around you, and then just move on, right? And it's also important to think that, okay, if people have no other work other than trying to pull you down, well, then congratulate them and just move on. I think, have I exceeded the time? Do we have more than an hour?
Ma'am, it is, if Menka, would you have another hearing?
No. I'm good. I'm good.
Okay,
so yeah, so I'll just hurry through the other things.
No, ma'am. I mean, from my side, there's no.
We're okay with it, ma'am. We can exceed a little bit.
Because this is a topic which is so dear to my heart, and I feel so bad that people keep depending on others to come and empower themselves, where every strength is inside you, right? And so you also need to build your tribe. In order to get over these aberrations, you have to build your tribe. You have to have people around you who encourage you to dream big, who make you feel good, who lift you up. And you have to support them also, because see, many people cannot express their inner issues, but then they carry such a lot of weight on their hearts. And you could save lives if you could reach out to people. And when you're building up your team, when you're building up your tribe, be sure to include male allies into it also. Because I have met many men who are very sensitive towards women's issues, but they cannot speak up because of peer pressure. So with your help, they can come out of their bubbles, or rather, I would say, come out of their challenges and be there with you, stand there for you, right? So there's a simple mathematics behind this. You share your joys and you double them, you share your troubles and you half them. So be sure to stay together and and work towards your goal. Work towards your goal. Now, then I come to the financial independence side, right? It's very, very important for a woman to become financially independent as soon as possible, ASAP. And not only financially independent, but also learn how to do financial management, right? It's very unfortunate that in schools, we do not have age appropriate lessons for financial management. That's very important because that is something which I realized later on that I wish somebody would have taught me all these things. So that's another area where you can empower yourself, and there are umpteen number of courses now. All the best of universities of the world, the Ivy Leagues, they offer all these free courses. The Coursera is one such website where you can find out courses which suit you. So that's another good way of enabling yourself. It's a very big enabler. It's a very big empowering tool. And then legal knowledge. Menika is there. It's so important for women to understand the laws of the land, laws which impact them, laws which empower them. And you have to know these laws to know your rights and then claim them. How can you even claim your rights if you don't know the laws of the land? So that is a very important thing. And as she rightly pointed out, I had started this program. It was called Adhikar because I was working in UP. So I tried to give a Hindi title to each of these programs which I had designed. And the tagline was, know your laws, claim your rights. So you need to know the laws. And I wish there could be a session also on this where the women could know about all these laws. And finally, I come to the spiritual level. Well, there's a big disclaimer out here because number one, I'm not talking of religion. Religion has messed up a lot of our lives. So it's not that, it's spiritualism. Religions we create. Spiritualism is something else. And secondly, you can choose if you feel this is not an empowering tool for you, fine. Right? So I just wanted to share how it's important because see, I feel we are all souls inside a body and we are all on our karmic journeys. We all have a karmic blueprint which we have to complete in this earth time. This is a soul print and each one's soul print is very different. That's why you see so many different journeys. You may be identical twins brought up in the same family, with the same diet, with the same environment, and yet you turn out to be so different because these are different things. These are different journeys, and you must connect to your higher self, your super consciousness through meditation. You have to connect to your inside. Just as I said, every power resides inside. So you have to connect to your inside. Then there's the question of dharma, right? Which we call dharma in Sanskrit or Hindi. It is not religion again. I interpret it as duty. And at every stage of your life, you will have different duties. So when you complete your duties and when it is in tandem with your callings, your blueprints, you will be at peace and harmony. And once you are in peace and harmony with your inner self, that inner peace, that is a very big driving force for success in life. It will, because, you know, if you're all over the place with all kinds of thoughts, it's very difficult to concentrate. If this is too much of an esoteric tool for you, then suffice it to say that understand what your callings are. Be grateful for whatever you have. Accept your failures and your deficiencies, work on them, and then go ahead, achieve your goal, and then move on. So these are the things which I wanted to share. There would be, I think, many parents also in the audience. I have just one humble request to you. You have to, please do not impose your dreams on your children. because as I said, they have their own karmic cycles to complete. So let them have their own dreams, be by their side, support them, let them find their own skies. Allow that free fall, because they needed to discover their life's goal. They needed to discover their blueprint, but be there like a safety net. Give them that feeling that you are there to help them, right? And always remember, the problem with a women empowerment is that all the gender discrimination starts at home. Like charity, equality will also flow from home, and it's an intergenerational issue. So please be careful in the way you raise your children. See, most of us are parents by default. We don't get lessons in parenting. It's very important. It's a very important thing, but then, okay. So, and for them, I would like to end with Khalil Gibran's poetry. This is for the parents, And I think he has expressed the relationship between a child and a parent in the best possible manner, right? So here's Khalil Gibran for all the parents or all the future parents, all of you. Your children are not your children, right? They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. So parents, at most, we are trustees of our children. We do not own them. So we need to understand the razor's edge difference between concern and control. We have to teach them how to think and not what to think. So thank you so much for giving me this platform to get my thoughts across, and now for the interaction.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think it was just really refreshing for all of us to hear a sort of individualized journey to self-empowerment, because as you rightly said, when we think of this topic, we think of what can the police do, what can the government do, what can media do, but we don't focus on the things that we need to do. And just before, I think we've got some really nice questions, but before I move on to the questions, I want to give one thing that really, I mean, everything ma'am said really resonated with me. But when she talked about, we don't need to make people our enemies, we need to realize that the mindset that people have is the problem. So instead, so everyone who shares a patriarchal mindset, there will be roadblocks, right? And I think I have really tried to remember that, because, when you're in court or when you're in any place, there are a lot of people who are, going to look at you as a small woman, like, as a young woman who's coming and trying to do things. That's what I have faced. But when you start saying that, they are not the issue, they have been brought up to think that a, young woman is not a traditional lawyer, and therefore she does not, I'm not going to give her the respect, I'm not going to treat her seriously. But as soon as you realize that's not his fault, he's a great guy, he's a nice guy, he's just not been conditioned to see me as a lawyer or as someone who has a position of authority. And I really think that once, I have internalized that, and everyone internalizes that, it just gets a lot easier to go by. Even when men stare at you on the street, even that, although it's not forgivable, but we can't just cry about it. So it's okay to say, okay, like, men are not used to seeing women wear short skirts. And it's really unfortunate that they have this disgusting mindset. But, I mean, I'm not saying that it's okay, but I'm saying that we cannot let it affect us beyond the point, because we have to realize it's the mindset and not the person that's the enemy. And I'm really, really grateful for ma'am for bringing this point out among the many, many other points that she brought out.
Menika, sorry for interrupting, but I just wanted to say that, see, at some point of time, you have to realize that it's not about you, it's about them and their upbringing. It's very unfortunate. But then the minute you realize this, you feel empowered and you may even kind of try to change this behavior. Because see, even that person is in a, has been put into a caste. These are gender stereotypings which we are experiencing. Maybe he has never been told that, okay, there can be a young woman lawyer or a young woman police officer. Many people tell me, why do you use the word woman police officer? Why don't you use the word police officer? It is great ideologically, but when you come to the grassroots, you have to put in that woman, because that is how the world is thinking. And that is how you're going to challenge that thinking when you bring in that noun, right? So that is why I always make it a point to say, okay, woman lawyer, it's important, because normally this society doesn't accept, because we have been conditioned not to accept. So we have to break these stereotypes, and the men and women have to do it together. And I have a lot of faith and a lot of hope from all the young people. And we are a young nation. You can change the future of this nation. It won't be easy. It will never be easy. You know, there's a Greek saying which says that nothing which is beautiful will be easy. It won't. But then, because it's not easy, it doesn't mean that we don't venture out on these challenges. And if you do it together, I'm sure you're going to change this world. And these are intergenerational issues.
Yeah. I think some of the questions we've got are very close to this. So I think, Ankita has asked, good morning, ma'am. Thank you for your valuable advice. What is the biggest challenge you have faced personally in your career, especially in finding your place in a male-dominated field like the IPS?
Well, it was the same gender stereotyping which I am talking of. And remember, this was way back in 1985. So there was this constant, botheration in the mind of my senior officers, whether she should be sent to a field posting, whether she will be doing well, whether she will be able to manage the law and order, etc., etc. But then, they also did not have a template to look forward to. How would they be judging me if they did not have a template which said that, okay, women officers can perform equally well, if not better than a male officer? So these were challenges, but then eventually, as time passed by, and one other thing, whenever you are in a male-dominated profession, you have to be very, very thorough in your profession. You have to know everything about your profession, because that is one thing which will get you respect and acceptability. So that is what I kept on doing. I tried to perform my best wherever I was posted. And then, of course, field postings came along. But again, in policing, one needs to understand that field postings as well as site postings are equally important, because they look at different aspects of society. So the biggest thing is you have to make yourself very competent. You have to keep building your skills and capacity. Not that since you have come this far, okay, I'll stagnate. You can't stagnate. So that is one way in which I countered the challenges which I have faced. Does that answer you?
Yes, that should. And Sonam has asked, thank you, ma'am, for your very heartwarming talk. This topic is very close to my heart. Why does patriarchal mindset still persist in the 21st century? How do we educate men to be feminist to address women's empowerment?
See, it's difficult. Not only patriarchy and misogyny is just one example. It is very, very difficult to change mindsets, because they have been formed over a long, long period of time. As I said, these are intergenerational issues, right? And they're difficult to change because you have to unlearn a lot of things. You have to concede a lot of thoughts which were not right. And nobody, likes to step out of a comfort zone which he or she has built over a period of time, right? And nobody wants to challenge oneself, one's own thoughts. So it is not also that it's never going to change. It has changed. It has changed a lot. I remember my great-grandmother, she could never talk to a male person without a kind of cheek in front of her. It was a kind of parda, it was a screen. It was a screen in front of her. And then, as I told you, my parents, in fact, my father didn't quite approve of me talking to the boys in the neighborhood. See where we are now. So things are changing, but because it is very difficult to get over our unconscious biases, and we have a lot of biases, every one of us, we have to pull ourselves out of these zones of discomfort, understand that the times are changing, understand that there is a need for diversity and inclusivity in our day-to-day lives. And then the changes will happen faster. And you as young people can surely work as catalysts in this process.
It's really, really well put, ma'am. I think Shreyas has asked a related question, which is on the role of law to change societal mindset. So not just law, but the ability to enforce the law. And how do you see both the law and the ability to enforce it? How has that changed societal mindset since independence?
Okay, if you see the laws, they are very socially progressive laws, especially the post-Nirbhaya period and Justice Verma Commission period. We've seen a lot of changes in the laws related to women, especially the Criminal Law Amendment Act, right? And then again, we saw a lot of changes in the Criminal Law Amendment Act of 2018, the POCSO Act, because of the Kathua incident. So many changes are there, and the law is progressing very fast. Now comes the law enforcement, right? So there we have to understand that there are people in the law enforcement agencies who are also coming from the same social milieu. They should not carry those biases. But again, I said it's very difficult to get rid of these biases, and it's difficult for everybody. Just because you put on the uniform, it doesn't mean that you have become a totally different person. You are supposed to get rid of biases, but the process is not easy. So one big thing can be, so I look at it from two angles. One big thing can be training, continual training, right? Refresher courses, basic courses, where gender sensitivity, child friendliness, these things has to be brought into their attitude in their day-to-day, which will obviously reflect in their day-to-day work. And again, it won't be easy. It will take it, and it won't come overnight. No social change comes overnight. And this is a social issue. See, like protection of women, safety and security of women, had it just been a legal issue, we have the best laws in the world. It should have happened by now. So it is a social and a cultural and a psychological issue as well. And therefore, there are multiple stakeholders in this process. Everybody is responsible. A parent is responsible in the way in which they are doing parenting. How are they bringing up their boys? We put so much of restrictions on the girls. Don't do this, don't go there, the length of the dress. Why are you talking like this? Why are you laughing so loud? Why are you sitting like this? Are we questioning our boys? That is important. See, basically, ultimately, what do we want? We want empowered women and sensitive men who know how to respect these women. And these women, they are their mothers, they are their sisters, they are their aunts, they are their girlfriends, they are their wives. So this thing has to be learned also. And once this these have multiplier effects. They will impact the law enforcement agencies also. And the second big thing is something which, Manika, you pointed out. I tried to do this gender sensitive and child friendly policing in UP. The problem is that law enforcement, especially policing, it has removed the community from its vision. We have to bring in the community. And that has created a lot of, trust deficit between the law enforcement agencies and the community at large. And community policing based on the, private-public partnership module, where you have other agencies, stakeholders from society, civil society, also pooling in their core competencies, right, and their skills. And when everybody joins in, then the policing will be as per the needs of the community. So what the women need? Safety, security. What the child needs? Protection of its rights. And then what flows out of that policing is not coercive policing, it is compassionate policing. And that is I think that should answer your question. I mean, what policing should we do that it takes care of these aspects? We actually need an attitudinal change in the policing. For the accused, it is fine. You need some kind of coercive policing where the rule of law is feared. But most of the women and children are victims. So some amount of victim-centric policing is also required. And as communities, you as a part of the community and as stakeholders with different core competencies, each one of you can contribute to it. But there are acceptance from that side also. It cannot be a one-way flow. Just as it can be a flow outwards from the policing side, it cannot be a flow outwards from community sides. Both have to meet somewhere.
Yeah. Are there models for this kind of community policing that, as in, because it's honestly the first time I'm hearing about it in terms of civil society being, having a partnership with the police. So how does this model exactly work? Like, how would a regular citizen be able to contribute to police efforts?
Okay, so that's a very deep question. I think in this, the first step will have to be taken by the police. Because there's that barrier. And that is exactly what I tried to do. I understood this because many women came and told me that, ma'am, it's very difficult for us to go to a police station. So as kind of, put together these 9 programs, improved continuously on them as long as I was there. And I tried to connect civil society with police, with the local police. Like one of the programs, if you go through it, it's called Sathi, Citizen Cadets, wherein I tried to connect the women in whom I saw leadership qualities. And we had a proforma, very detailed proforma to gauge this. And I started connecting them with their local police station so that they could become a voice and, intelligence for the police and for the community, a voice for women and children who couldn't voice their problems, couldn't go to a police station because they were not articulate enough. And a source of collection of intelligence and information for the local police. Because, in villages, the communities are still so well knit. And this idea came to me when I went to a remote village in a district called Maharajganj. Anybody from UP would be knowing it. This is a village which is on the borderline of Nepal and India. Nepal and Maharajganj. It's called Nichlol, and I forget. It was something like Nichlol village. And I had gone there because Mahila Samman Prakosht was also the nodal agency, and I was the nodal officer for the anti-human trafficking efforts of the state. So this is the border area where there's a lot of human trafficking. And then when I spoke to the women, I realized the kinds of little things which they were doing to prevent human trafficking in that area. So I got this idea that, look, they have so much of leadership qualities in them. They may not be very literate, but they have those qualities, right? And so I tried to harness it through this program. I tried to link them up with their local police station so that since they were vocal, since they were articulate, they could take these cases. But there has to be a reach out from the other side first. Because see, you know, these are all results of the conditioning and the wrong kind of conditioning. Even today, a mother will tell the child, "Bachcha jaldi so ja, nahi to police wala aa jayega." Why do we do all these things? You think when the child grows up, or she is going to have faith or trust in policing?
Yeah.
We have to be very careful, you know, sound is a very, very careful energy. So what we speak is very important. And then what we speak depends on what we think. Thought is another powerful form of energy. So parenting and upbringing again becomes the core issue. Because you are raising the future citizens of India. Some of them will become future policemen. Some of them will become future lawyers. So what quality of citizens are parents raising? It's very, very important.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That's really insightful. And I wish that more people were thinking about these kinds of alternative models of policing. Anushka has asked.
Are there, Manika, they are there. I don't know whether they're exactly, they won't be exactly the same, because one of the plus features of community policing is that it is very amenable to the, it can be customized. To put it in a phrase, it can be customized. So you have a lot of examples around the world. Japan does a lot of community policing. Chicago police is totally into community policing. So it's very important to connect to the people. You are policing for the people.
Yeah.
You have to connect with them.
Yeah.
Because you have to give them what they need, and it's a delivery system. See, justice delivery system is a delivery system. Judiciary is a part of it, right? So we have to deliver the prosecution is a part of it. So we have to deliver the kind of justice which is apt, and the kind of
that community
enforcement and crime detection, etc., which the community needs and expects from us.
Yes.
That we need to understand. There's no other way out.
So Anushka Dhanija has asked that, ma'am, we're witnessing huge cases of gender atrocities and violence, which really disturbs one and makes us feel helpless. As young people, how can we address this?
See, there's no need to feel helpless about anything. Of course, there are times when it does pull you down. It does make you feel slightly, you know, depressed about whatever is going around you. But then again, as I told you, all the things which I have spoken of will help in empowering you. And then this community policing is one thing which can take care of this. And talk about these things. You know, we try to push uncomfortable things under the carpet. No, your platform is such an empowering platform. We need to talk more about these things. See, a lot of change has come because conversations have started happening around these things.
Yeah.
One empowering tool which the perpetrators and future perpetrators have is silence around these issues. That really empowers them. And that is what they want. That nobody should talk about these things. There should be complete silence about women being sexually assaulted, etc., violence happening against women, right? So domestic violence is no longer a personal issue under the law. So you have to start talking about these things. Form small self-help groups around you. That's one good starting point. You see, it's okay. It's okay not to do very great or big things at the moment, but take the baby steps. They will ultimately lead to change. And as I said, you have the energy of youth with you. We, elderly people or senior citizens, have the power of experience with us. So let us combine our core competencies. You give your energy, I give my experience, and we can do magic in society. And don't depend on the other person to do something. You do it. You do your bit wherever you are. Don't forget the power of one. We are always looking at somebody else. Okay, working in a team is great. It is, in fact, indispensable. But each one of you has to remember your own power. The power of one is very important. You pool these powers of one together, form a team, and then go ahead. Even if no one joins you, you have to think about these things, and you will find something which you can do, some small thing which you can do. And remember, no movement starts from a big place. Every movement, every change, every revolution starts from that tiny seed. The problem is we are not discussing these things enough with the youth of today. We have to tell them these things. And I'm sure that there are so many people like you who want elderly people, who want mentors, who want counselors, who talk of all these things. Where does our education teach all these things? And where will it take us? We are going into the future where we don't even know what type of jobs we are going to hold. So what are we actually teaching children in school? It can be totally different with AI, with VR, with, I don't know, machine learning, with everything changing, coding. I think maybe coding may be very important. Now, although I'm not from the science side, I'm from the economic side, but I can understand that I don't think we are teaching the relevant things to our students. And emotional quotient is going to be a very big thing in the days to come because of uncertainties. Nothing is certain. Only thing certain is there is going to be a lot of uncertainty. So resilience is very important. Is our curriculum teaching this? If it's not, then it's not relevant.
Yeah.
Why don't you start doing all these things? You start talking about all these things. Change will come. It has a multiplier effect. Either it spirals upwards or it spirals downwards. But the multiplier effect is there. So you can start, catch hold of a group of school-going children around you. Start talking about these things. Start empowering them. Start talking to their parents about resilience, about the right form of parenting, relevant form of parenting. So there's a lot you can do. You just need to put your mind into it.
Sure. And ma'am, you've highlighted so many aspects to empowerment that now, even something like gender-based violence, if you can sort of help a woman open a bank account, that will in itself have a trickle-down effect.
Yes.
So everything is sort of connected. So you can empower. I mean, if all of us take up even one aspect of empowerment that you have spoken about, we can try and inculcate that around the people we know and then sort of go from there.
Yes, you don't need to look too far, too distant. It's all around you. You just need to keep your eyes and ears open and have a kind of passion for this, have a calling to work towards this, right? And take the first step. People will join in. People will, and these are neutral causes. These are not political causes that you'll find opposition. So start doing it from today. 2-3 of you get together and start doing it. As a lawyer, look, Menika has so much of scope of teaching, telling the women about the laws of the land which enable them. So these are small things, and each of you has a domain expertise which you don't realize. Each of you has a core competence. You just have to realize it, and you have to design ways and means how you're going to take it forward and how you're going to benefit people through this. That's all that is required. Again, the problem is in typically average Indian families, general Indian families, these aspects of giving are not taught. We are always teaching about acquiring, acquisition. We also have to teach our children how to give. They have to learn how to give. Because if everybody is acquiring, you see the amount of chaos it's going to create. Whereas you visualize a situation where everybody is giving a little bit to the other person. You see the situation, you see what change of energy levels it can bring in, what type of energies it can introduce. It's not required that you all throughout your life, you keep competing in every sector. Collaborations also bring in a lot of joy. Find out those areas of collaboration. It will not impinge upon your profession or your competitiveness. That is a separate thing.
Yeah.
That's also important, something which parenting is largely missing out on. And we are creating insensitivities around us. And it's going to, if the floodwaters have come to your neighbor's house, your house is also not safe. We have to get rid of this feeling that, okay, I will do everything for myself and my family. No, it won't help. In the long run, it won't help. And always remember, we have to leave behind a legacy for our children and their children. We have to leave a better world than we found the world to be. And we can do a lot.
Yeah. I think the point on individual effort yet collaboration, like Pallavi mentioned, that I started this association called Women in Criminal Law Association. It essentially started with 3 of us saying that, as criminal lawyers, we're always questioned that, why don't you do civil? Why don't you do matrimonial? So there are a lot of roadblocks. So we decided, let's come together. So we'll make a group of all the criminal lawyers in the city we know who are women. And that's it. It was a very simple idea. We didn't have any grand plans for it.
Yes,
and we just made a WhatsApp group. And we've just, gone from one thing to the next, and we're doing different things. And it's just, there's so much power that we didn't even realize there would be. From someone getting a job through some contact, to someone, going to the police station, Acha, you come with me, so I'm not alone. So multiple things. I think the point on taking initiative, don't wait for other people, but at the same time, once you take that initiative, people will join on, and it
exactly
on its own. Yeah.
And these are neutral initiatives. It doesn't impinge upon anybody's space, right? It empowers everybody. And there are so many, only problem which I can understand has happened is we have not been taught to think in this way.
Yeah.
The minute we are taught to think in this way and we start thinking in this way, it's going to pick up. It's like the dominoes effect, it will pick up. It has to. It has to.
So Pallavi has asked a very important question, which is, ma'am, when you spoke about creating a tribe, so how do we do this for women who come from a more disadvantaged backgrounds, perhaps in a rural setup, or just women who have come from other disadvantaged sections of society? How do we contribute towards empowering them or creating a safe environment for them?
Creating a safe environment for them.
And so that's my addition. But Pallavi's question is more about empowering women who come from different backgrounds, especially not so fortunate parts of society.
Okay. So I see Pallavi as an empowered woman. And so again, you can become their voice, Pallavi. Right? We who are educated, who have been fortunate to be educated by our parents, right? So we can be their voices. We can tell them about their rights, right? We can form small associations who can voice their issues we can take those issues to the people who matter in the government. Maybe if it's a law and order, I mean, if it's a police related issue, to the local police person, right? Or to the DM or to the SDM. So that's how we can do it. And in the process, you will also kind of gradually empower them to become their own voices. Because see, we have grown up in a different milieu, right? Those are people who are, as it is in a very secluded society, right? And they are not into the mainstream. So you have to bring them into the mainstream. And you are empowered enough to bring them into the mainstream. And women, as we shouldn't look at women as a genre. You know, there are so many intersectionalities in women also. And these people, they are the most marginalized amongst even the women. So you have basically to become their voice to start with. Then you can connect them to NGOs or maybe organizations who promote self-help groups, who can do microfinancing. Look at the Bangladesh model. That is worth looking at. The garment industry in Bangladesh, although there are a lot of issues about sexual harassment at workplace and all, but the way they have stood up, how the women have been empowered through microfinancing. So if you can connect a financing agent or a group to these women, you've done the job. And if people like Menika could teach them about the laws and rights, they also get the feeling, no, we are living in a space where we have some rights. Otherwise, they have been taught right from the beginning not to think about any rights. So, you know, and this was a big experience for me. There were many women who would tell me कि हमारा husband हमको मार दिया तो क्या हुआ? He has the right to beat me. We cannot digest this. They have internalized it. They don't even understand that it is a crime, because that is how they have been conditioned right from their childhood. They have been asked to adjust, or itna adjust kar gaye कि they have, you know, foregone their existence, foregone their rights. Their personalities have ceased to exist. They have shrunk so much. You give them back their identity. They have lost their identity. And these are discussions which we must hold. They're very uncomfortable discussions. Who likes to discuss all these things on a Saturday morning? But I think these are very important things. And that is how change will come. And it is coming. It's not that it's a total wall. No, it's not. There are cracks in the wall. There are chinks in the armor. Just broaden those cracks and get the wall down. And it won't be easy. It won't be easy, but you have to persist. That I said, you have to make it your own dream. It has to be your own goal. You cannot borrow a dream from somebody else and live it. It's not sustainable. I hope that answers a little bit of your query, Pallavi.
Yeah, ma'am, thank you so much about bringing up the topic of intersectionality as well among women. That as empowered women, we now need to sort of take the benefit that we have got and give it to other women who have not got this benefit right now. So Moira has a question. I believe Moira is from Philippines. And she says that why do these patriarchal and gender stereotyping issues continue to fester even when India has had a female head of state? The same applies to my country as well, Philippines, where we have already had 2 female heads of state, yet the issues are still there.
I think I've answered this question because it's not very easy to get out of these mindsets. Mindsets, by definition, mean a mind which is set into a caste, right? Yeah. CAST, not CASTE. So it's a cast, it's a mind cast, right? And how do you get out of this mind mold? It's not easy. You have to continuously challenge your beliefs. You have to continuously challenge yourself. You have to continuously put up against these microaggressions.
Yeah.
You will face everywhere. Whether it's home or whether it's your workspace, you will have to put up to these microaggressions, and then you have to be your authentic self, I think, because that is really empowering. You cannot be somebody else. You have to be yourself. Then you have to challenge these microaggressions, and you have to do a lot of discourse and discussion on these topics. They will go away gradually, not that they won't go. You think, that's what I said, you think of your great grandmom times and her grandmother's time. Ask them how those times were.
Yeah. Yeah.
That will give you confidence that, look, change is coming. And you see, the biggest thing is you have to become that change agent. Whatever change you are looking at, you have to become that change agent. Don't wait for others. It all starts from you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am. I think that this talk will hopefully help everyone to realize that we don't need to wait for others to
Hopefully.
empower ourselves and empower the people around us. And there are many facets of empowerment. So even if we start with one thing, then we can work towards the eventual goal. And it's really, I mean, I think personally your views on parenting and the values we teach children are just so important. And hopefully Pallavi and Shreyas can call you for another talk on, lessons that parents need to teach.
You know
children.
why? Because my children keep pointing these things out. So I have become very, very sensitive towards these things. They always tell me you can't micromanage our lives. So then I started thinking backwards, and I really then I have stumbled upon Khalil Gibran, and I realized, okay, they are saying the right things. How can we? Their dreams are so different. They may fail in their dreams, but they will not carry on your dreams for long. They will make a U-turn. So right from the beginning, don't impose your dreams. Let them find their own worlds. We all fail so many times. So we have to just be there for them. They'll find their own way out. And everybody's timeline is not the same. Some people are late bloomers. They bloom much later on in life. So we have to have that patience. What else do we do?
Thank you so much, ma'am. I'll hand it over to Pallavi and Shreyas to conclude the session.
Thank you, Menika, and thank you, ma'am. I think you touched on so many facets of empowerment. I don't think I can wrap it up also in a sentence, but thank you so much for joining us. First to Menika for being a great moderator. Thank you for doing that. And our participants definitely for the amazing questions, but more so for Sutapa ma'am because she has given us so much food for thought. I think I just like, okay, listening, and I'm like, I will obviously will be putting up the video on YouTube, and I think that's one thing. If you guys want to just share it with your family and friends, and I think it's very important, right? For all of us, that small change, that incremental change comes from us within. We have to start one person at a time. So thank you, ma'am, and thank you, everyone. Like I said earlier at the start, we're not going to have a session next week on Saturday, but we do have one on Thursdays on Delhi's air pollution. So do join in, and thanks again to Menika and Sutapa ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, ma'am, you're on mute. You're saying something. Sorry.
So I was just wishing everybody a very happy Diwali and stay safe, doubly safe. I think the crackers have been banned, so good to that extent. So stay safe and stay connected. All the best to all of you. And I hope I haven't touched too many raw nerves, especially of the parents.
No, I think it was a great session.
Because I think we need to change. Each one of us needs to. And Okay then. Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me this platform. All the best to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day, everyone. Take care.